Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're asking a really fundamental question. Why do true leaders eat last? We're going to explore the fascinating, almost hidden biology behind why some people willingly sacrifice themselves for others, while some, well, they only ever seem to look out for themselves. It's an age-old debate, right? Where do heroes come from? Are they born or are they made? Well, it turns out, to answer that, we have to look under the hood at the human machine. Our bodies are essentially driven by biological systems that are perfectly designed to keep us alive. But before we get into the actual chemicals governing all of this behavior, I want to ground this in a real-world story, a story that perfectly illustrates what happens when these biological systems are working at their absolute best. Picture this. We start our story on a dark, heavily clouded night in Afghanistan. The date is August 16th, 2002. Down in a valley, navigating through this incredibly treacherous terrain, were 22 American Special Operations troops. And they could just feel that something was off. A deep unease kind of settled over them. Up above the heavy cloud cover, two A-10 Warthogs, these are heavily armored, low-flying aircraft designed to provide ground cover, were circling. One of those pilots could actually hear the unease in the troops' voices over the radio. So he makes a split-second decision to dive his plane down through the thick clouds, flying completely blind into the valley below. And almost immediately, the call comes over the radio. Troops in contact. Those 22 Americans on the ground were suddenly under heavy, effective enemy fire from both sides of the valley. That pilot, who goes by the call sign Johnny Bravo, suddenly found himself flying less than 1,000 feet off the ground, in the pitch black, literally dodging valley cliffs. He repeatedly risked his own life, laying down suppressing fire. He actually had to count out loud just to measure his distance from the rock walls. 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, pull up. He did this over and over again, completely running out of ammunition, and he even convinced his wingman to come down and do it with him, flying wing to wing just 3 feet apart. Because of that absolute bravery, that night, all 22 Americans went home alive with 0 casualties. When asked later why on earth he would risk his life so that others might survive, Johnny Bravo gave a profound answer. He simply said, because they would have done it for me. Now, think about this stark contrast for a second. It says so much about the environments we create. In the military, they literally give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. But in modern business cultures, we routinely give out massive bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others just so that they may gain. We've got it completely backwards. I mean, wouldn't you absolutely love to work in an organization where you had the unshakable confidence that the people around you would sacrifice for you? To understand how to actually build that kind of environment, we have to understand the biological machinery at play. So let's get into part 1, the biological machine and the 4 chemicals of happiness. To understand where people like Johnny Bravo come from, we really have to look at the chemistry driving our survival. Every feeling of happiness, pride, joy, and trust you've ever had, it is 100% chemically produced. Basically, our bodies use 4 primary chemicals to direct our behavior, and they divide really neatly into 2 camps. First up, we have these selfish chemicals, endorphins and dopamine. You don't need anyone's help to get these. They are strictly designed for individual survival and, quite frankly, just getting things done. Then, on the other side, we have these social chemicals, serotonin and oxytocin. These are designed for the survival of the group and for building the tribe. Let's break these down a bit. Let's start with those selfish chemicals. Endorphins really serve one primary purpose, to mask physical pain. If you're a runner, you definitely know the runner's high. You push your body incredibly hard, you feel fantastic, and then, an hour later your muscles are screaming. That's just the endorphins wearing off. Now, 50,000 years ago, this was absolutely vital. We weren't the strongest or fastest animals on the block, but man, we had endurance. Endorphins masked our exhaustion, so we could track an animal for miles and miles just to bring food back to the cave. Next up is dopamine. Oh man, there's nothing quite like checking something off a to-do list, right? That's dopamine. It's the highly motivating chemical that rewards us for getting things done or finding exactly what we're looking for. It's actually why we like to eat. When primitive humans saw an apple tree way off in the distance, a little hit of dopamine kept them intensely focused on walking toward it. This is biologically why we absolutely need tangible, visible goals today. If a corporate vision is just some vague to be the biggest or the fastest growing, our brains can't visualize that. It doesn't trigger dopamine at all. But if you have a clear metric, a very clear milestone, dopamine gives you that incredible feeling of winning every single time you get a step closer. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Dopamine comes with a massive warning label. It is highly, highly addictive. Just think about these modern triggers. The beep, the buzz, the ding of your cell phone. Boom. Dopamine hit. If you wake up and check your phone before your feet even hit the floor, you might actually be an addict. And hey, don't worry, we're all a little guilty of it. But when corporate environments unbalance our systems by only giving us numbers to hit and bonuses to chase, they're essentially just feeding us dopamine. And just like any addict, whether to gambling or alcohol, a dopamine addict will eventually sacrifice their relationships and their resources just to get that next hit. Which brings us to part 2, the leadership chemicals in building the tribe. Because to protect us from those destructive selfish urges and to make sure we survive in a really dangerous world, human biology developed 2 incredibly powerful social chemicals. And these are the absolute foundation of great leadership. The first of these is serotonin. You can think of this as the leadership chemical. It's totally responsible for our feelings of pride and status. It's the exact reason why public recognition matters so much. Think about a college graduation. The school could easily just email you a PDF of your diploma, right? I mean, you met the requirements. But that wouldn't feel very good at all. Instead, we have this massive public ceremony. When you walk across that stage, serotonin surges through you. Your status rises in the group. And the truly brilliant part? Your parents sitting out in the audience get the exact same surge of serotonin. Basically, they're stealing a little bit of your biological joy. But jokes aside, it beautifully reinforces the vital social contract between the tribe and those looking out for them. And this brilliantly illustrates the real cost of leadership. See, as a species, we are completely fine with hierarchy. We willingly step back and let our alphas eat first. We really don't mind that our bosses have higher salaries or much bigger offices. But this biological system comes at a heavy cost. The group isn't stupid. We don't just give those perks away for free. We biologically expect that when danger threatens the tribe from the outside, the alpha will be the one to run toward the danger to protect us. That is the cost of leadership. When corporate executives take massive multi-million-dollar bonuses while simultaneously sacrificing their employees to layoffs, we get viscerally angry because they have severely violated a deep-seated biological contract. The second social chemical is oxytocin. This is that wonderful feeling of deep safety, love, and real trust. It's exactly why you choose to sit next to someone you know rather than a complete stranger on a bus. Oxytocin is triggered by physical contact, like a mother bonding with her newborn child or even just a genuine handshake before a big business deal. But crucially, it is also triggered by acts of human generosity. And remember, a true act of generosity means expecting absolutely nothing in return. Consider this for a second. If I tell you I gave $1,000 to charity, you might think, oh, well, good for him. But if I tell you I gave it my entire Saturday to go paint schools in the inner city, you put a much higher premium on that. Why is that? Well, because you can always make more money, but time and energy are equal, non-redeemable commodities. Once they're gone, they're gone. You literally cannot buy oxytocin with an email or a financial bonus. True leaders know that sacrificing their non-redeemable time and energy, actually getting up from their desk, walking 30 feet to talk to you instead of just firing off a sterile email, that is the absolute only way to build real trust. But what happens when leaders totally fail to build that trust? Well, we meet our villain in part 3, the danger of cortisol. What happens when leaders create environments driven entirely by numbers, paranoia, and extreme self-interest? Enter cortisol. This is the feeling of intense stress and anxiety. It's designed to keep us alive by triggering a paranoid fight-or-flight response. Just imagine a herd of grazing gazelles. If one hears a rustle in the grass, it looks up, completely tense. Cortisol shoots through its system. Now, the amazing thing about social mammals is that if one looks nervous, the others get nervous too. They all look up. If there actually is a lion, they all bolt and live to see another day. It's a fantastic system for sudden, life-threatening danger. So how does this survival response turn into a total disaster in the modern workplace? Well, you are not supposed to have cortisol in your system all the time. But when you work in a low-trust environment where you're constantly fearing layoffs, navigating toxic internal politics, or dealing with a boss who doesn't have your back, you get a constant daily drip of cortisol. This creates a really destructive cascade. It triggers ongoing paranoia. It biologically inhibits the release of oxytocin, which completely destroys your capacity for empathy and ruins teamwork. And just to fund all this nervous energy, your body literally shuts down your immune system. Our toxic corporate environments aren't just frustrating. They are quite literally making us sick. And that leads us nicely to part 4, the circle of safety. Because the biological antidote to all this toxic stress is an environment intentionally created by a leader where people are shielded from all that internal politics and fighting. It's exactly like Aesop's fable of the four oxen. When they stand tail to tail, their horns face outward, and they can defeat any lion that comes at them. But the second they bicker and separate, the lion just picks them off one by one. The dangers on the outside of an organization, things like the economy, the fierce competition, those are a constant. The only variable we can control is how safe we feel inside. When a leader actively expands the circle of safety to the outermost edges of an organization, so that even the most junior person feels they truly belong, the team stands together and becomes practically invincible to outside threats. The really beautiful thing here is that you don't need a fancy title to create the safety. Leadership is not a rank. It is not a corner office or a position. Leadership is simply a choice. It is a daily, active decision to look after the person to the left of you and the person to the right of you. When you commit to serving others, oxytocin wins, serotonin wins, and the whole team thrives.
Ultimately, it all comes down to this. The ancient Spartans were the greatest fighting force of all time. But it wasn't their muscles or their spears that made them great. It was their massive, heavy shields. They were famously told to come home with their shield or upon it. Because if you lose your shield in battle, you cannot protect the person to your left and your right. You completely destroy the formation. It's not the spear that makes you powerful. It's your willingness to hold up the shield for your team. It's your willingness to sacrifice your time, your energy, and your credit to make someone else feel safe. That is what creates a Johnny Bravo. So the question I'll leave you with today is this: whose shield will you carry tomorrow?